Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be Chapter 4 of this reading. Just as I stepped out, Wolf quickly moved to run up and jump onto me, swinging both of her arms around my neck. In her motion, she swung herself to hang on my back, making her lose the hat and fake belt buckle. With a big grin on her face, as she went to cling onto me, Wolf childishly asked, "Guess who I found? Guess who I found?" I walked over to Zaec and Zaec, who were standing about 15 feet from the door, talking to each other, as I said, "Wolf, you're 30 years older than me. Act your age. You're being ridiculous right now." "Aw, come on," she whined. She then leaned over my left shoulder as she asked, "Don't you want to know?" "No." "Please?" "No." "Please?" "No." We kept at that as the human girls walked over to my brothers, Amber glancing at the thin gold wristwatch on her left arm. Zaec looked at the human and laughed, noticing that she needed an electronic device to tell her time. Amber looked up at my younger brother, confused, and asked, "What?" "Do you really need to know what time it is?" he asked, placing his right fingers on his head and flicking them towards her as to insult her intelligence. "What?" she barked. Amber placed her left hand on her hip and stood with her legs at an angle while she continued, "You idiots think time is a waste to have?" "Actually," Zaec replied, "it is a waste for us. Our race does things according to when we wake up and the mood we're in, never by time. Time is only for rallies we set up on a race course." Amber crossed her arms as she looked away for a moment and quietly said, "Talk about stupid." "By the way," Zaec said with a smirk, "what time is it?" "It's 3:10, you jackass," the human barked. Zaec glanced up at the sky and said, "I wish I had my umbrella still." Zaec laughed at the human again. Then he asked, "What do you need that for?" Amber turned to my little brother once more and barked, "To keep myself dry in the rain, retard." "Oh yeah, I'm the retard. Look who's trying to stay dry in the rain." "Brother," Zaec said as he looked over at his little brother, "be nice to her and shut up." He then turned to Wolf and I and yelled, "Zaec, shut her up!" With that, Wolf quickly jumped off my back to stand at my right side as she transformed into her full wolf state, giving out a loud and vicious growl at my twin brother. While doing so, she viciously yelled, "How dare you speak to his lordship in that manner!" Zaec stood in silence with his fists clenched tight as he glared at the Alicans, yet stood still, knowing he couldn't touch her, being that she was my servant. Like the rest of us, Zaec had never liked the idea of being ruled over by anyone in our family, especially not by a servant that he believed he outranked in power. However, to keep order and honor within our bloodline, the highest ranking member in the Shero family in any group is always looked upon as a lord. Since Eyeless disappeared on us, that made me the superior one at that moment, with Wolf second in command. Regardless, Zaec damn well knew that I outranked him in all attributes, knowing in all of our sparring matches, I gave him brutal beatings to remember. My twin brother took a deep breath and released the grip from his fists as he looked up at me, irritated that he had to see me as his superior. I wasn't feeling any better. I didn't like seeing my brother know I could best him, but that's just how it was. Zaec knelt down on his right knee, placed his left forearm on his left knee, while he had his right fist placed onto the ground in front of his right knee with his knuckles down. This position was a form of respect to those who were higher up on our world, along with being used as a way to ask for forgiveness. As Zaec bowed his head, he said, "Forgive me, my lord. I shall never speak to you in that manner again." I chuckled, having no care to the situation, then snapped my right fingers to tell Wolf to settle, as I said, "It's okay, bro. Thanks for helping me calm Wolf down, but you could have handled it a lot better." "Yes, my lord," Zaec said as he stood back up. The two humans watched us, shocked at the scene, Then Amber asked, "What the fuck just happened?" Wolf lowered her growling and stepped back from my twin brother slightly, still focusing her anger on him. Zaec turned to the human and replied, "Don't worry about it. Let's just go. Whatever's out there might be causing trouble." Confused at what just happened, Amber and Jewel glanced between my brothers, me, and each other. Yet after a few seconds, they just shrugged their shoulders as to forget it. Then Jewel turned to me and said, "How are we supposed to get to where you need to go? Your car won't fit all of us." I shook my head as I thought, they can't be this stupid. I then turned to the human and said, "Since you and Amber can't fly, you two will have to hold on to Salus and Wolf. Zaec and I can deal with whatever comes our way easily." Wolf walked over to Jewel. She changed back into her half state and stood with her left side towards the human, where she asked, "Ready?" Jewel just sighed as she and her friend took off their jackets and threw them on the ground to leave them. I didn't understand why they did that, but then again, humans were a weird bunch to me. Afterwards, Jewel nodded her head and said, "Let's go. I'm guessing we'll be traveling out of this awful weather if you're going to be flying." "Hey," I barked as I glanced over at Jewel. "I love this weather." "Yeah," Wolf said as she turned to me. "And you love my ass too. Unfortunately, it seems neither of them you can truly contain." My brothers laughed at that as I blushed slightly and said, "What? That's not." Wolf did a little seductive dance, ending with her back to me as she flicked her tail up. I then just crossed my arms and turned away as I said, "Ugh, never mind." Wolf giggled as she went to hold Jewel on her back, doing a slight hop as she stood up and making the human yelp a little in surprise. Salus and Amber turned their heads and looked at each other, confused, then shrugged as Amber placed her arms over Salus' shoulders from behind. He knelt down a bit to let her jump onto his back as she crossed her legs around his waist. Then he crossed his arms behind him to hold her up as he stood up straight. Once ready, Salus and Wolf looked over at each other with a smirk, then nodded and jumped up to quickly fly off. Along the way, the two humans yelped, which my brothers and I found funny and laughed. Zaec and I waited to watch the group fly away, laughing at Amber's and Jewel's panicking. We then turned to my left to notice another group of humans glancing up and down between us and the four that took off, shocked and confused. Simultaneously, Zaec and I gave a smirk at the humans and Smoke and Sync as we asked, "What? You never seen someone fly before?" We laughed some more as we flew off after Wolf and Salus, with Zaec flipping off the humans with his left finger and sticking his tongue out until we were about 100 feet away. The humans stood in awe as they watched us fly away, while one dropped a drink without realizing it. About halfway to where we needed to go, Zaec and I saw Wolf and Salus waiting for us. Wolf looked like she was sitting with her right leg over her left, along with her arms crossed over her chest. Salus seemed as if he was sitting too, but with both legs and his arms crossed. Just as Zaec and I shot by, Wolf and Salus immediately followed. At the same time, Jewel went to nearly scream at the top of her lungs in fear, yet Amber was just overjoyed as she rooted to go faster. As we reached a small row of islands, Wolf and Salus pulled away from us to keep themselves at a distance to what might happen. They then stopped just before Zaec and I neared to hover 5 miles high over the capital city. "Hey," Jewel said, "is that Hawaii?" "No, you idiot," Salus replied arrogantly. "It's the lost city of Atlantis. Of course it's Hawaii." "Hey, shut up," Amber yelled, slapping our younger brother with her right hand across the back of his head. "And learn some manners." Unmoved by my little brother's words, Jewel continued, "Then, what happened?" What indeed? Not only was it still raining like crazy, but half of Oahu's capital city looked as if it was blown away by a meteor. However, there was no meteor. Not from what I could see, and my eyesight was better than Wolf's. Nothing was in ground zero, but a small amount of smoke that was rising from it. A lot of excess energy was too. Zaec and I stared down at the city, our fists clenched tight and ready for whatever might happen. Floating 3 feet apart, as my twin brother said, Can you sense it? It doesn't feel like someone I know. Yeah, I said. It's weak, but it's definitely not normal. I then concentrated to figure out what could have created such destruction, finding it was of another life form, and said, Kexen. There's a Kexen here? Damn, wouldn't have guessed that. What are they doing here? Better question is, how did they get here? As weak as I can sense it, there's no way someone of that power level could have followed us on their own. Wolf overheard the conversation and asked, Did you hear that? Yeah, Salus replied. Kexens. That's bad news. What's a Kexen? Jewel asked. As Zaec and I continued with our investigation, trying to sense the Kexen's energy again somewhere down in the city, Wolf explained to the humans what a Kexen was and why they were a threat to our ways of life. After a minute, Zaec said, Damn, I can't find them. I have, I said. He's hiding, but not well enough. I charged a small amount of energy into a blast near the palm of my right hand, forming it to the size of my fist. The energy was completely rounded and was a slight translucent white, so it was weak, yet able to do enough damage to reveal the enemy. Normally, the lighter and more transparent the color, along with the smoother the spiritual charge, the weaker the blast was. Once it was charged, I threw the sphere with a slight underhand straight into a maul near the crater where I sensed most of the Kexen's energy coming from. Zaec moved to put his hands behind his head, as if to relax. Then he said, You know, how is it that you can do most things better and easier than I can? We're twins. We should be doing things the same way and gaining power at the same rate, being equals. My blast struck through a brick wall, then quickly broke out the opposite side of the building, pushing someone with it. It exploded and tossed the person completely through another building and into the pavement of a 2-lane street. A city bus drove by and tried to stop from hitting them, but only ended up running them over and getting the person stuck underneath. Nice shot, Zaec said. See, it's things like that I should already know how to do, and I don't. What's up with that? He then turned to his left slightly to look over at me as he crossed his arms over his chest and continued, You obviously know how to do things like that with ease. Father knows how to do it. Eyeless knows how to do it. Why can't I? Keeping my attention on the scene below, I replied, Because you're yakking too much to sit back, watch, and learn. You're always bitching about something that you should know instead of actually taking the time out from your bitching to learn a thing or two. Whatever, he said, turning away from me. Why do you think me, Eyeless, and Father are really quiet most of the time? Because you're too damn stubborn to speak to one another? I stood in silence for a minute as I thought about what my twin brother just said. Then I responded with, Well, that, and we want to meditate on how we can improve ourselves, so that when we start training, we can see if what we gathered will actually work. I still say you're all too damn stubborn. I turned to Zaec and barked, Look who's talking, you jackass! As the two of us continued to bicker, the person who was run over by the bus crawled out from underneath it and simply stood up. They then brushed the dirt off their shoulders as if nothing serious had ever happened. The bus driver, who looked like he was in his late 60s, walked up to the person to see if they were alright. The person that was run over grabbed the driver by his shirt's collar with their left hand, then threw him across to their right side as they yelled, Fuck you, punk! The person slammed the driver into the top center of the bus, causing the large vehicle to topple over onto two smaller ones. The person who was run over jerked their head from side to side, popping their neck joints. Then they looked around and yelled, Who's the bitch faggot that shot me? What the... I asked myself, not fully understanding what happened. For some reason, the person that I hit wasn't the Kexen that I was looking for. That didn't make sense to me. I never missed my target. I crossed my arms and my legs, tilting my head to the right, as I asked myself, how did I miss? Just then, my twin brother started laughing out loud as he leaned back, flipping himself upside down with his arms pushing against his stomach. He even continued to laugh as he said, You shot Yojin. You stupid bastard. Overhearing my twin brother, Wolf said, Yojin? Oh, by the creator. Confused, Jewel looked down at the Alikins and asked, Who's Yojin? Wolf just bent her ears down and replied, You'll soon find out. Yojin looked up at us and quickly threw his arms up for a second, as if signaling a question. Then as he moved his arms down, he slapped the sides of his coat. He motioned to kneel down on his left leg, moving his left arm in front of his leg, and slightly bowed his head. Then quickly looked back up and thrust himself into a jump to fly towards us. The amount of energy that he put into taking off the ground created a powerful shockwave, which made a 3-foot long and 3-foot deep crater form where he once stood. Not only that, the shockwave forced the bus behind him to do a barrel roll over some humans, missing them by inches, and into the lobby of a bank. It took Yojin about 4 seconds to get within 10 feet of us, where he stopped instantly with his arms crossed over his chest as he gave a very angry expression, his upper lip nearly snarling. I glanced at the man and asked, Was that really necessary? Bastard ran me over. He had plenty of time to stop. Also, he gypped me in the fair, so theft. Yojin Virus was a Kexan and was considered my best friend, though we never actually acted friendly towards each other. In fact, that's how I would rather consider it. He was about 5 feet and 8 inches tall, yet had a more muscular body than mine. He had sparkling silver eyes that was hard to tell if it shined or not, while he had a very rare skin type for either a Kexan or a Kexin. To what a human would say, Yojin was black. He had thick black dreadlocks that hung down to his upper torso, with 3 of his locks completely colored in silver, one on the right side of his head and the other 2 in the back. From what he told me, having each piece of his hair colored like that meant that he had single-handedly killed a very high-powered warrior. 2 I knew were Kexans that no other had been able to defeat alone or with the aid of others, but he did. The other I don't remember though. I don't know why he did that, I guess just to show off, but it didn't really mean anything to anyone else. He wore a black trench coat that was purposely sewn without the sleeves and no shirt, with the coat having reflective silver seams and a silver interior. His baggy pants were custom-made black, gray, and white camouflage, with reflective silver seams as well, held up by a black leather belt with a silver skull buckle. He had combat boots that matched his pants in color, with the laces mixing between black and silver. Out of everything, his weight training gloves were dark brown, and his nails were painted as such. He also had very thin, brown-framed sunglasses, the lenses being 1.5 inches in diameter circular and completely pearl white. I liked those glasses. While glancing between my brothers and I, Yojin yelled, "Which one of you bitches blasted me?" I just sat in silence as my twin brother continued to laugh. After a few seconds, our friend yelled, "If you don't answer in the next 10 seconds, I'm gonna go batshit crazy on all your asses." Zaec flipped back around, still laughing, while he pointed his right finger straight at me and said, That's the stupid bastard that did it." Yojin looked over at my twin brother and lowered his arms as he tightened his fists, while he yelled, "You think this is a joke, motherfucker?" He quickly jolted over too, and punched my brother in the center of his torso with his right fist, slightly paralyzing him. He then pulled his fist away and grabbed my brother's hair by the ponytail with his left hand, twisting it around to force him to face away, as he said, "Don't joke about something that you wouldn't find funny if it happened to you, white boy." He then twisted his hair even harder as he grinned his teeth in anger and said, "Got it." Finally calm and in very much pain, Zaec said, "Yes, sir." Yojin let go of my brother by shoving him aside, then turned to me and asked, "Do you have any idea what you were aiming at?" He then adjusted his glasses, using his right middle finger to lightly push the metal frame against his face. I placed my legs down as I continued to watch the mall below and said, "Sorry about that. I don't know how I missed." Yojin chuckled as he turned to face them all and said, "Technically, you didn't miss. The Kexan you tried to hit was smart enough to put me in the way of the blast." Zaec quickly moved up next to my left side as he looked over at my friend and asked, "How did you get here, dude?" "Oddly enough, your father sent me here to deal with this guy." "Great," I said, irritated. My twin brother and I glanced at one another while I said, "Father knows of where we are now." Just as I looked back down at the mall, Zaec said, "Well, it's not all bad. At least he isn't raging mad and jolting after us." "Yeah," I said, not even the slightest bit convinced. "Not exactly," Yojin added. "Dominic only told me to seek out and destroy this Kexan. He didn't say where to find it. I followed the bastard here on my own, so I doubt that Dominic knows of where you guys are still." "Yeah," I responded, still not convinced. After waiting in silence for a few seconds, Zaec asked, "Why are we still up here when we should be down there looking for him?" "Are you really that stupid, white boy?" Yojin barked as he looked over at my brother. "The only way we're going to kill this Kexan without massive collateral damage is by waiting for him to show himself. And you blowing a bus into a building isn't collateral? Shut it, white boy." Amazingly enough, Yojin was right. However, the only reason as to why Yojin didn't want to go down there and find the Kexan himself was because I was there. He knew I hated doing collateral damage when it wasn't necessary, though that didn't stop him when he was fighting alone. Waiting was the best option available at that point. There were too many of those fragile humans down there with him. Fighting him out in the open was the only thing we could go for. Knowing that the Kexan was trying to hide, he wasn't just going to start killing people right offhand. I'm sure though, with sensing my friend's power levels and mine, the Kexan wasn't going to hide for very long. He'd have to show his face eventually if he wanted to try and gain more power. I heard a slight crash that came from the mall. Then Amber impatiently yelled, "How long are you guys gonna just stand there and do nothing?" "I thought I sensed incompetence nearby," Yojin said. He then looked over at me and asked, "Why is their kind here?" Zaec laughed, then replied, "Zaec lost a bet." I quickly punched my twin brother in his right arm with my left fist, while I barked, "Bite me." Yojin and I turned to look over one of our shoulders towards the new humans as I said, "We're waiting for someone that Yojin left behind. And just FYI, as humans, you may not see what goes on." "Quit saying FYI, because you sound stupid." My friend and I turned back, with me in irritation, as I said to myself, "I hate humans." I felt a massive amount of energy heading towards us at a high rate of speed, yet before I could even react to avoid the blast, I saw my friend get struck by it. I could have stopped it if I really tried, but I'm lazy. Yojin can take care of himself, especially since he was thrown far out into the ocean. Unchanged by what just happened, Zaec raised his right hand slightly and aimed his thumb where my friend was thrown, and said, "Yojin's out." "Thanks, Captain Obvious," I said as I cracked my knuckles. "You think he'll be okay?" "Most likely," I said as I got into my fighting stance. Zaec got into his posture at the same time, opposite of mine, and said, "You better hope so." In my stance, I put my left side most forward by placing my feet apart, while I made my shoulders slant downward towards my left side slightly. I motioned my left knee to bend, with my right knee to bend just a bit more. My body leaned back slightly and put more pressure onto my right leg, yet gave it more control in any motion for a punch. I turned from my head to look out past my left shoulder and motioned my left arm to be down near my left leg. I had my left hand placed just in front of my left knee, while my right arm was moved to be above the right side of my waist. At the same time, I had my right hand knuckles aimed down slightly and both of my hands ready to motion into fists, with my pinky and ring fingers bent in more than the others. Once ready, the Kexan we were to face shouted, "You fools don't know what you're up against! I'll kill you all!" He then quickly revealed himself by teleporting in front of my brother and punching him in the face with his left fist as he yelled, "Die!" He sent my twin brother down into the ocean as well, while I quickly turned to the Kexen and kicked the back of his head with the top of my right foot. I then swung around to kick him with the back of my left heel in the same place, accidentally sending the Kexen towards the others. Wolf quickly dodged him, then yelled at me knowing she couldn't fight the human she was carrying still on her back. The Kexen regained himself from his fall and turned back towards me, trying to get a punch in with his right fist. I blocked his fist from my face with my left hand and swung my right fist at him, but he blocked that with his left fist. He gave me a wild-eyed look, baring his teeth with a malevolent grin as he said, "Give me your power. You might as well. You're just going to die." He then quickly pulled his right fist away and tried to punch me, but I blocked it again with my left. "Jeez, man," I said with a light smile on my face, struggling to hold the Kexen back. "You're pretty strong. Stronger than I had expected." Yet that was when I got serious and quickly gave a blank expression and said, "However, I'm just getting started." The Kexen quickly backed away from me to release the deadlock as Yojin and Zaec jolted back up to help. But when the three of us tried to strike at once, the Kexen stretched his limbs out and bent his head back to blow out a shockwave from his body. With us stunned and pushed away, he jolted to strike my twin brother and friend again, tossing them back into the ocean. Yet when he spun around to kick me with his right heel, I lowered my left arm and blocked his attack with the back of my right fist just a few inches away from my head. As he kept his crazy evil grin at me, the Kexen said, "He's coming for you. Don't try to stop him. You're only going to die in the end." The Kexen quickly spun in the opposite direction and tried to kick me with his right foot again, but I raised my left fist and blocked that attack as well. He then continued, "Just give me your power and I will end it, for both you and him. You can't win." "Is that so? If by him, do you mean father?" The Kexen quickly pushed himself away from me as he became surprised at what I had suggested. I lowered my left fist as I stood up straight and said, "If so, then you should have realized it by now. I've never lost a fight." Both Zaec and Yojin appeared behind the Kexen, acting as if unharmed. He glanced around in fear at the three of us surrounding him, then looked back at me as I said, "And no matter what father brings into battle against me, I still won't lose, because I have something he doesn't." The Kexen was in fright of me by those words and asked, You knew?" However, before I could speak again, he quickly became angry and said, "You weren't supposed to know. That's not how it was told." The Kexen tried to punch me with his right fist, but I dodged it by simply leaning myself slightly to my right. I then quickly grabbed his wrist with my left hand and gripped it tight, forcing him to struggle in trying to pull his arm away from me. However, I struck him with my left knee to stifle him a bit. "Just as dumb as always, I guess," I calmly said. "Kexens never change. So with that, I'm no longer into killing you. I'm just into giving you an ass whooping." When I said that, the Kexen started to panic and tried even harder to remove himself from my grasp. However, no matter how hard he tried, I wouldn't even let him slip out the slightest. My grip was so tight that I could feel I was crushing his bones. While in his hyper state of fear, the Kexen said, No, it can't be. Why him?" Ignoring the man, I said, "We'll let Yojin deal with your death once we've felt you've had enough." I turned around from my right and threw the Kexen as hard as I could down towards the city. A second later, Zaec teleported and kicked the man in the stomach with his left foot. He then did an upward kick with his right foot into the Kexen's head, also throwing himself into a backflip. Once the Kexen was about 6 feet away from my brother, I rushed over and started rapidly punching and kicking the man around his body. Zaec joined in after and took to the Kexen's right side as I moved to his left. Every time I punched the Kexen in the face towards my brother, he would punch the Kexen back towards me. As I would knee him in the stomach, Zaec kicked him in the back, and vice versa. That was just our style. This went on for a while and ended with us kneeing the Kexan in the stomach simultaneously. My twin brother and I moved to be side by side and took a step back from the Kexan, where we watched him suffer from our assault and struggle to stand up straight. Zaec and I gave a light smile, then we spoke in sync once more as he started with, "I think he's had enough," I ended. The Kexan coughed up a handful of blood, then he looked up at us with a painful yet very angry expression. He bent his head down and coughed one more time, then moved to try and punch me. However, he was halted by Yojin, who struck the left side of the Kexan's head hard with his left foot. Stunned by the amount of force that was used, the Kexan blacked out. Yojin stepped back to laugh with my brother and I, watching the man fall towards the ground below. After that, Jewel asked, "What just happened?" Yojin pointed his right finger to the Kexan after the man hit the ground and said, "That was for sucker punching me, bitch." "Hey," Amber barked. "I thought I was gonna see a fight. What the hell happened?" With that, I thought, Creator, stupid humans. They don't listen to a word I say. Yojin looked over at Amber and said, "What do you mean? We just kicked his ass." What I saw was barely anything, and it only lasted a few minutes. Everyone, except Amber and Jewel, just laughed at that. Just because their eyes couldn't see how fast we fought doesn't mean we didn't have ourselves a fight. "What?" Jewel asked, probably wondering what we were all laughing about. My brother and I turned to look over at the human as we spoke at the same time and replied, "Don't worry about it." Yojin lightly slapped the side of my right arm with his left hand and said, "Here he comes." The Kexan gave out a loud and angry roar as he charged at us with great speed, his right fist pulled back and ready to strike. He turned back just as he swung his fist up at me, but he missed when I simply leaned myself back slightly to dodge the attack. As he passed, I quickly grabbed his right ankle and pulled him down to my level. That way, Zaec, Yojin, and I could start kicking his ass again. After another triple beatdown, Zaec and I stopped as Yojin struck the Kexan one last time in the stomach with his left knee, forcing the man to cough up blood again. The Kexan held his stomach with both arms, his eyes aimed to the water as he said, "You can't be him. Why are they... the rumors?" Ignoring the Kexan, Yojin looked over at my brother and I and said, "Finish him, and leave nothing left, not even to the imagination." He then looked over at the humans and called out, "Watch closely, Earthlings, because this can only be done once on any single person." Zaec and I looked over at each other as we gave a smirk, then looked back at the Kexan, each with one eyebrow raised. We got ourselves to stand side by side, my twin brother to my right, while we moved back a couple feet from the Kexan. We were to obliterate the man, using something only Zaec and I knew we could do together. No other group was capable of harnessing this power. The Shatter Technique. The most powerful energy blast ever created in the Shero dynasty. No one man could harness its raw power. To do so could shatter the very fabric of that person's mind, body, and soul into nothing. In a simultaneous movement, Zaec placed his left hand down and slightly out from him as I placed my right hand from me. We held our palms forward and our fingers slightly stretched, with our hands about 3 feet apart from each other. The Kexan looked up at us and quickly realized what was going on, but couldn't do anything because of the beating we gave him. He was too weak and unable to get away. A quiet noise came from the energy that we were collecting at the base of our palms. Then we channeled the energy to the tips of our index and middle fingers, bending our other fingers in. When we moved the energy, the sound turned into a high-pitched, ear-piercing whine that I knew could make wolf's ears bleed. The energy that was channeling in between us moved into one whole blast, taking form just an inch from our fingers. Yet even with that, the blast was only visible by the immense infrared heat that it gave off, which was far greater than anything Earth-based. The size of the blast was only about half a foot big, but held more than enough power to obliterate a single person. In a desperate attempt to save his life, the Kexan pleaded, You wouldn't dare. You could kill yourselves using that. You could even kill your friends. You'll kill everyone here. You wouldn't dare. Still giving our smirk to the man, Zaec and I gave our farewell simultaneously and said, It's over. May your soul be forever lost in the realm of darkness. No, the legends can't be true. Shatter. We lifted our hands towards the Kexan and swung them up and over our opposite shoulders. The whine faded as it shot out at the speed of sound, creating a light sonic boom as it grew to be twice the size of the Kexan. When the blast hit him, it made a glass-shattering sound, and his body vanished into nothing. Not a single cell of him was left behind. With that, Zaec and I lowered our arms as we stood in silence to mourn the Kexan's passing. A respectable thing to do, even for an enemy. Hey! Amber barked. What's going on? Why are you idiots all of a sudden so quiet? Yojin looked over at me as he hit his right fist against his left palm and asked, Want I go smack her one? Please don't, Zaec said as the three of us turned to face the others. I glanced over at my left shoulder to look back at the remains of Honolulu, then turned to face Wolf as I said to Yojin, We'll fill her in later. Right now, we need to clean up the mess. Zaec glanced over at the nearly destroyed city, then looked over at me confused and asked, exactly how? My right eye started to twitch slightly as I thought, damn, I was hoping one of them would think of something. I wouldn't even know where to start, or with all the deaths and whatnot. Oh well, best to just let it go for now. I turned back to look down at the city, dissatisfied as I saw how only a few of the humans down there were trying to help one another. The rest, about 85% of them, were yelling and screaming at each other for stupid reasons. It made me want to go down there and kick the crap out of them, torture them some, so they really have something to bitch about. I wonder what that Kexan was talking about, I pondered out loud to myself. However, nothing came to mind, and I just sighed, turning back to Wolf again, and continued, Let's just go back to Cali. Afterwards, maybe we can— Yeah! Zaec yelled in joy as he threw his right fist into the air. Let's get a party started, in the name of Koju, and get crunk up in this bitch! Everyone just stood in silence and stared at my twin brother irritated, as if we all didn't have a clue to what the hell he had just said. I'm not even sure he knew. After a few seconds of silence, Zaec glanced around at everyone else, and was probably wondering why we were all staring at him like he was an idiot. Which of course he was. Yojin gave my twin brother a hard slap upside the head with his right hand, then said, White boy, you have no idea what kind of trouble you'll be in if you talk like that again. Got that? My brother rubbed his head with his right hand, a bit upset as he replied, Yeah, gotcha. Zaec teleported us back to the library, since he was the only one who could do so. I noticed that the rain was still falling like crazy. Didn't change. Something was up. Once Amber and Jewel could place their feet on the ground, they ran over to each other and gave a big hug, jumping for joy. When done, they motioned over to the outside benches, covered by a small roof about 10 feet high. They both sat the farthest one away from the rest of us, probably to gossip without us knowing. Talking about what, I had no idea. That wouldn't matter if either Wolf or I actually tried listening in. We could hear someone's lips move in a steel factory, regardless if they actually spoke. I turned to Yojin as I placed my hands into my pants pockets, with a slight grin on my face, and said, So, Yojin, you still racing? He looked over at me, confused, and replied, Yeah, man. Why? You wouldn't happen to have a silver supercar parked near here now, would you? Just then, Yojin quickly grabbed the right side of my coat's collar with his left hand and pulled me over as he angrily said, It better not be scratched now, white boy. I will kill you if it is. Wolf laughed at that, then said, Calm down, Yojin. It's perfectly fine, okay? Don't worry about it. Good, my friend said as he released me from his grasp, shoving me away. Except for the fact that I scratched my claws across it, you bitch! Yojin began chasing Wolf around the newly cut grassy area, with her changing into her full animal form as my friend turned into a black wolf as well. He chased her around in the parking lot as fast as they could, but even so, she just continued to antagonize him. I turned to Zaec and Salus to see them peacefully staring over at Amber and Jewel, then asked, "You two don't actually think that you might have a chance with them now, do you?" Salus just kept his eyes on Jewel as Zaec watched Amber, neither one even having the slightest reaction to my question. Bunch of idiots. After a few seconds, I barked, "Hey!" "Yeah, bro?" Salus asked, quickly turning towards me with a smile on his face. "I thought you two hated humans." "What do you mean?" he asked, looking back over at Jewel. "Somehow she's just so beautiful." I shook my head as I went over to the benches where the two humans were, while I said, "Dumbasses." I sat down on the left-hand bench, out of the three there, and at the farthest side of it away from Amber and Jewel. Though I wasn't in the mood and really didn't want to, I decided to ask and see if they wanted to do anything that would involve getting my brothers to snap out of their mindless daydreaming. It really irritated me when I had to ask a human for anything, no matter what it was. Amber and Jewel sat for a minute thinking of what they wanted to do. Then they gave me a few suggestions and told me to tell my brothers that they didn't have a chance in hell with them. With that, I stood up and casually walked over to Zaec to check and see if he was paying any attention to me. He wasn't. I pulled my right arm back as far as I could as I spread my palm and fingers a bit. Then I swung my hand to slap the left side of Zaec's face. I struck him so hard that you could hear the sound of the slap from about 30 feet away. A punch wouldn't have sufficed. It needed to sting. Zaec fell down onto the concrete floor and onto his butt, placing his hands over his inflamed left cheek. At the same time, he shouted, "Son of a bitch!" "Get up," I bluntly said, not a single trace of emotion in my tone. "We're gonna get something to eat." I then turned to the right side of the parking lot and headed towards my car as I said, "Amber and Jewel are hungry." Salus regained consciousness, shaking his head slightly as he blinked a couple times and said, "Oh yeah, humans need food. I forgot about that." Idiots. As I waited at my car for everyone to get ready, so that we could head over to the restaurant, I watched Wolf and Yojin. They came running down from the other side of the lot, trying to see who could beat who in a foot race. Just as they were about to enter an intersection, one of the exits for the lot close to where I was, a light blue sedan quickly backed up in front of Yojin and got him to hit the right side of the back bumper head on. He hit it so hard he even moved the thing slightly. He gave out a loud yelp of pain that startled Wolf, which she quickly turned around and looked for my friend to see where he was. Hearing something hit her car, the driver got out as my brothers and the human girls came around to see what had happened. The driver was a very young white female that stepped out to look and see what had hit her car, only to find my friend in his wolf state dead. However, I knew that wasn't the case. Yojin liked to mess with people's minds, as much as I did, when given the chance. And, of course, playing dead on someone was just one of the many things we liked to do. The driver found Yojin and started to weep for him as she said, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. You poor thing." Knowing that my friend could hear me, I quietly said, "Don't get up just yet, dude." Wolf quickly walked over to me as she changed back into her half state, wrapping both of her arms around my left arm. She just smiled at the sight of the driver being saddened by what the woman thought had happened, since the Alicans had some of my cruelty in her. Everyone else watched the panicking sedan driver in confusion, while Jewel asked, "Oh no, what happened?" I gave a light smirk as I replied, "Yojin got run over." "Oh man," Salus said as he chuckled, "this ought to be good." The lady continued to say her sorries as she paced back and forth in front of her bumper, quickly saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I can't believe I just hit you, you poor thing." She went on without realizing that the rest of us were just standing there watching, laughing at her like she was a sideshow. However, Amber and Jewel weren't laughing though. They were actually pissed at us for making this girl go through all this unnecessary stress. Too bad. It was funny. The driver was absolutely oblivious to the world around her as she repeated the same things over and over again, as if it was going to make things any better for her. We finally got tired with it after a minute, and I called out, "We're going to get some food, Yojin. You in?" My friend quickly motioned up on his feet and ran over to us, scaring the crap out of the human nearby. Yojin looked back to see that the driver was so shocked that she was frozen stiff, with wide open eyes aimed at the ground. He changed back into his normal form and examined his car, making sure we didn't put even the smallest amount of scratch or dent on it. After that, Yojin motioned over to the right where the driver's side was and kicked the door lightly to make it open, as he said, "Let's go, white boy." He got in his car and turned it on to make it quickly fade from silver to galaxy black and have sparkling silver tinted windows. Along with that, his car had stock rims that were painted chrome silver with completely white tires. I walked over to the driver's side of my car and said, "Okay, anyone who's not afraid of having some fun, please seat yourself comfortably and shut up." Just then, Sailors quickly shouted, "Shotgun!" He then jolted over to my friend's car, got in, and slammed the door shut before anyone could take breath. Wolf turned towards my car and opened the passenger door to let Amber and Jewel into the back seats, with Zaec sitting in between the two humans. Once everyone else was seated, I got in, shut the door, and turned my car on, flipping off Yojin with my right finger. My car also quickly changed into its original form, with its loud engine rev echoing across the lot. When I released the e-brake, I lowered my right hand to place it onto the steering wheel, while my friend drove around to the nearby exit of the lot and waited for me. He revved his engine every 2 seconds until I pulled up to the line with him, then we both rolled our windows down. Looking over at my friend with a smile, I said, "Let's just make this simple. Freelancing, are we? Don't we always?" Yojin laughed, then revved his engine harder as I gave mine quick light taps. The driver of the sedan, who we had scared the crap out of, ran up to Yojin's window and yelled, "You bastards better explain yourselves or I'll turn you in." Yojin looked up at the girl, acting as if depressed, and said, "Oh, okay." He then quickly turned to me and, in a fake accent, yelled, "Run, mon!" In less than 3 seconds, we had left the lady and the high-pitched sound of our tires peeling out behind. We immediately headed towards my left into town, ignoring the back route since cops had that area already occupied. Yojin and I were side by side the whole way down the hillside, barely avoiding any other drivers that randomly appeared. My friend was good, usually had cars faster in acceleration than mine, but I had always been the best street racer in the galaxy, no matter where I was or even what I was driving. And ripping through a massive amount of traffic was like 5-second time to me in a quarter-mile drag, fast and easy. Plus, when driving through traffic, all I ever did was drift. I love to drift. It added style to my skills, and it was really the only way I knew how to take corners at high speeds. It was also very fun for me. I couldn't get enough of it. Yojin never figured how to do that. It took us no time to get to the restaurant, with minor traffic delays and with no red lights in our direction, amazingly. However, Yojin and I took 2 different approaches to the lot just outside the store. I went to cut through the entire lot itself, passing other stores along the way, while my friend just continued with the actual roadway. As I parked my car into a handicap spot, because I'm an asshole like that, Yojin came roaring into the lot and slid to a stop to take up 2 parking spaces that were next to mine, his brake lights flaring right at me just half a car length away. We both turned our cars off and headed into the restaurant, laughing as we recapped what was wrong with our route and whatever crazy stunt we did to get there. The humans got their orders, and we moved to sit at the biggest table in the back. Jewel and Amber had something simple, but Sailus got himself one of everything on the menu and went to taste testing it all. I don't even know why he bothered. Then again, I love soda. That's the only thing humans can make that I think is good. Soda. The rest of us just talked about what was going on and went through a list of people who might be onto us. No one should have known that we were on Earth except for Serena, who I knew wouldn't betray me. Yet still on my own, I wondered as to why the Kexan from before spoke about a rumor. I sat with my back against the wall and at the outer right edge of one of the two tables we used, just so I could see down to the front doors easier to anyone who walked in. Wolf sat to my left as she leaned on my shoulder, nearly asleep with her hands gently touching my left hand. Yojin sat across the table from Wolf, as Zaec sat across from me, my twin brother watching Amber at the other table from my right. Jill sat closest to my right, but about 3 feet apart, with her human friend sitting in front of her, as Salis sat near her right. Watching every other person walk in, I said, either we find whoever it is that's following us and destroy them before they have a chance to give out our position, or we let this whole plan either fall into my father's rule or crumble to dust. Pondering about it, Yojin said, It's highly unlikely it would be Vincent. He hates your father more than you do. Won't obey a damn order he gives him. And it can't be Joey, Zaec said. He's too much of a wuss. Anything that involves fighting, he'll immediately decline it. What about Fox? I suggested. She may not even be working for them. She could have somehow followed us and didn't mask her energy. No, Yojin said. In general, Alicants don't do anything better or worse than their masters, which means if it isn't Vincent, then it can't be Fox. But she does have a crush on Wolf that's greater than her will and her loyalty. True, Wolf said, but still. What about my bunny? Possible, Yojin said as he adjusted his glasses, but I would still doubt it. She's too young to do anything on her own, while at the same time, she won't take orders from just anyone. She's just as stubborn as you two. Wolf gently rubbed her head against my shoulder for a bit, then said, She definitely takes after her father. She's such a good girl. I glanced at Wolf, confused, while I asked, Excuse me? Maybe it's Serena, Zaec suggested. Not in a million years, Yojin replied as he looked over at my twin brother. As much as I don't trust her and can't even stand the sight of her. He then glanced over at me and said, No offense, white boy. I just shrugged, knowing he had a feud with her, while my friend turned back to my brother and continued, She would never pull off something this stupid. Not even if it worked in her favor. What about Eyeless? I asked. He just got here and stormed out before we met up with you. Yojin looked over and adjusted his glasses again. Then as he lowered his hand, he said, Not sure. I would think not, seeing as your elder brother wouldn't help your guys' father for anything, even if just to become ruler of our galaxy himself. Just then, my spine chilled, as if darkness had grasped it and was slowly sucking the life out of me. It was as if nothing mattered anymore, and life wasn't worth living, but you still had that feeling to be scared. Scared to talk, scared to suffer, scared to even continue forwards. Scared of death itself. Only one man was able to give me that feeling. One Kexan that had amazingly been around since the dawn of our time. In that instant, a man dressed in bright white clothing, styled like mine and looked just like me, came through the front door and jolted towards us without hesitation. Before I could call out a warning or even move to defend anyone, the man made his move and went for the easiest one of us. For some reason, it went quiet. Real quiet. The only sound I could hear was the sound of a thick liquid substance slowly dripping onto a wooden platform, with a harsh and irritating sound of metal and bone grinding against one another. Horrified, all I could think was, Why her? She was only an innocent. I slowly looked over to see that a bright white and simple-looking katana had pierced through the heart of an innocent. Amber. In a dark and twisted voice, with no care or emotion in his tone, the man that struck Amber said, May your soul be forever lost in the realm of darkness, Quellen. Having nothing but blind rage and hatred, I quickly motioned up and lunged at the man as I swung my right fist towards him with all my might and shouted, "You bastard!" This concludes the reading of Chapter 4. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. And with that being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 5.